Mastering electronic dance music.
Hey guys, welcome back to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro, and this is the third video in my series introducing music theory. And today I'm going to talk about chords. I've briefly touched on these in a couple of the previous videos here, but I didn't really get into how to create them and everything like that. So I did tell you in the last video here that you have the seventh note is a really good relationship that that you hear when you bounce between them. So now when you build a chord, actually it's based off of that. So the most simple chords that you'll hear a lot are called power chords, and they're only two notes played at the same time, and it's typically the root note and then a 5 notes higher, or the root note and 7 notes higher. 7 notes higher is the more common one. So I'm going to show you a power chord really quick here. And so this is the power chord. It's really simple, and you could if you just combine whole tons of power chords, and you could get interesting stuff. So nothing too amazing there, but it shows that with that simple structure, you could do quite a lot. So all you need is a 7-note difference between the two. Now, how do you make that into a full regular chord? And it's actually pretty simple. You have your scale, and if you look, I believe this is a minor scale. So, anyway, let's just switch for a second here, and we're going to do a C major scale, because that's the easiest one for me to work with and showing you guys this. So once again, for a C major scale, we know it's all the white keys, so we can make that really easy. Whoops. That would be C minor. So, to make a C major chord, there's a difference between a C major chord and a C major scale. A chord is playing notes at the same time. So, to make a C major chord, you just basically take the 3 notes, but you skip 1 note. So you go 1, 2, 3, and so you're not skipping 1 note on out of every single note possible. You're skipping 1 note in the scale. So that's what this ends up sounding like, is this. So if you see here, if you look at the keyboard there, what I have is we know all the white keys are in C major. So that means I have the first one, and then I skip one, and then I'm going to that one, and I skip one, I'm going to that one. I'm not counting the black ones when I skip it. I'm just skipping 1 note in the scale. Now, this is for the minor scale. It's the same idea, except this one will be shifted over. So you, instead of being able to play it like this, for your root chord on the C minor scale, you're actually going to have it like this. So instead of right there, it's right there. That's just because that note is shifted down. There's a couple other notes that are shifted in the C minor scale, but that's a little bit confusing now. So I'll just leave that. Consider it this way: to get a major or a minor chord in a particular scale, you just take a note, and then you skip 1, and then you go to the next, and then you skip 1, and then you go to the next. So, for instance, let's see here. I have E, and if I want to make a E chord, it'll be dependent on what notes I have available in this scale. And if I recall correctly, this should be correct still. So that's a seventh note difference still, but I believe this is a E minor chord. And the reason I could tell is because you actually can count the number of steps in between, the number of half steps in between, to see a difference. So if you see here, my C major chord is this one, and this one. Now if I drag this up, this is the difference between major and minor chords. A major chord has the initial 1, 2, 3, and then this one, and then 1, 2, and then this one. So this one has it reversed. It has 1, 2, and then that one, and then 1, 2, 3, and then that one. So the thing that you could remember all the time is to make any chord that is based off major or minor without doing like sustained notes and stuff like that. Then basically you're just you're taking the 7-note gap, And then you're either throwing one here or here. And depending on which one you choose, if you choose a higher one, you get a major chord. If you choose a lower one, you get a minor chord. And you don't typically work too much with choosing if you want a major or minor chord when you're working in your music, because you're in a scale. So if you want a E chord, you are pretty much limited to whether it's E major or E minor. In this case, I can't throw an E major chord in here, because if I make this major by shifting this one up, it's no longer in key and it'll start to sound weird. So if you just remember to make a chord off a particular note in your scale, you just lay out your scale here, and then you just skip one note in the scale, and then so take the 3 notes starting from whatever one you want. And remember, the scale repeats all the way up and down this keyboard, so you can move things. That brings up another interesting point. So you have this chord here. What happens if you take this B and you move it down an octave? What chord is it? It's still the same chord, but it's just a different way of playing it, and it does give you a completely different sound. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play this chord. Actually, let's go back. I'm going to do a C major chord here. Whoops. And then I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to move this one down an octave. And then we're going to hear the difference between the two here. Wow. Sorry about that. So this one sounds a little bit lower, but it sounds pretty much like the same chord. So let me do this. Here we go. So it sounds pretty much the same chord, except for just a little bit lower. And you could continue doing this. Drag that down again. And it basically just sounds like the same chord, but a little bit lower. And I believe these are called inversions. And what you could do is, as long as you have these 3 notes, it doesn't matter what order they're in, it just matters that you have these 3 notes, and that's what comprises your chord there. So I could actually pull this whole thing. I've moved the bottom 2 down an octave, but if I pull the whole thing up an octave, you'll get to hear something interesting here. Whoops, that wasn't an octave. This is an octave. So you notice that it's the same thing as if I would have just pulled this bottom one up. So that's the way you could kind of do interesting things. And here's a very big key in EDM. I'm going to pull up a synthesizer here so that you really can hear what's going on. But one of the fundamentals of EDM is not having your chords too close together, because they start to sound very thin. You don't get this big sound. So I am going to I have a preset here that I made a while back that'll probably work. Oh no, I made it on my other one, my other computer here. Let's see if I can find a nice super saw. I don't know. Here, let's just type saw, S-A-W, and okay, bass, dance lead. Yeah, let's try one of those. Here we go. Dance lead. What is this? Okay, here we go. This is a really good example. So I'm gonna delete this here. If you listen, make sure this is on polyphony. Yes, it's on poly, and max number of voices. That's enough. So we have these 2 chords, and if you notice, it sounds very thick and it doesn't sound all that musical. So what can I do to remedy that? So we know this, we could do inversions here. So let me pull down the root note an octave, and then I'm going to pull down this note. Actually, I'm going to pull it up an octave. Now you get this really wide chord. It's the same chord, but it's just over a very wide span. So what do we get? It sounds less stuck together and mushed together. So it's kind of got more sound. And this works best if you have just a regular boring old super saw. Let's see if I could, I could build one really quick. So here we go. Yeah, reset preset, and then I'll just set this to sawtooth. Unison will do 8, spread, detune, and then pan. Okay, so this might work here. Okay, not an amazing super saw. Let's see if I can turn this up. Voices 3, stereo, detune. Okay, and maybe this will be a bit better. Not really, but anyway. So we have these chords here, and we can spread them out by just grabbing various parts and moving them around to invert the chord. And it gives it a lot more prominence, and it just typically sounds better musically. So so generally speaking, you just, when you build a simple chord, you can move around these bits by 12 notes, and that's just an octave. Now, actually, a cool shortcut in Logic Pro is, let's see if I can do it. Now I'm like blanking on how you do it. Which is it? Okay, maybe I should just check here. Transpose. Here we go. An octave, and then this is just shift. I believe that's control. Yeah, something like that. So, whoa, that was not what I wanted. That was very weird. No, definitely not what I wanted. There we go. Okay. So that lets you move things up quickly without having to actually drag them. So, yeah, just experiment, try to figure out what that one is. I'm sorry, my bad. Anyway, so that's the fundamentals of chords. You have major chords, minor chords, and it just depends which one's gonna fit in your scale. You choose a root note you want to make a chord off of because you're doing some sort of chord progression, and then you make a chord off of it. Now, there are a couple more that I want to briefly cover, and that is the sustain one. So you have the chord here. This is just a C major. Let me switch back to the piano for simplicity's sake. And if I do this, if I bring it down, and instead of having that one note gap, and I just bring this down to right next to it, I get a C sus2. And I believe that sus is sustain. But I haven't checked into it too much. But essentially, it gives you variety for, you have the same power chord here, but you just have a different note to accentuate it. So you go. And similarly, you could, if you pull this up, you get a sus4, which is a lot, it gives a lot more brightness to the chord. So you have. So the deal there is you're just basically taking, you know that you need this for the main chord structure, and then you just choose, do you want it in the middle, up, or down? Now you got to be careful because if you end on a sus chord, a sustained chord, then you have chances to where you'll find it hard to switch to a different chord unless you go back to the root chord. So just keep that in mind. It might be better to switch back. You can do it without doing that, but just see what works for you. So the final chord addition I want to talk about is adding high notes to the end of the chord. So we have this, and we can actually add this one or this one, and you get a bigger chord that is comprised of 4 different notes. So it sounds very full. And you just need to experiment to see which one you want for what particular sound you're going for. So you have the original, and then you have the one with the added end. So this is a C major 7. So it kind of gives it just a little bit of I don't know. It sounds like a little bit of mystery at the end. So you have there's also one more you could do. Instead of having it right up there, you could bring it down. One note in your scale, and then you just have. So it doesn't sound quite as good as this one, but yeah. So essentially, we're just keep in mind that the structure of your chord very largely depends on the scale. So if you just think of it as a major chord or a minor chord is dependent on the key. But they both are constructed by taking whatever note you want to make a chord on, skipping one note in the scale, and then skipping one more note in the scale. So then you have those gap notes, and then sustains are just shifting the middle from there to there or there. So so you know, I could take this for the C scale. I could take any note on the C scale here, and then just apply the same concept. The key on my keyboard seems to be broken. Let's try this. So we have that, and then I could just do the same thing. So you get the general idea. Now, obviously, I said there's a difference between major and minor chords. And I did show you how they sound. Minor chords sound darker, but it's entirely dependent on what key you're in, because I can't choose a C minor chord in a C major scale. It just doesn't work that way, because this is not a valid note for the C major scale. So I'd want to use a C minor scale if that was a chord that I really wanted. Now, there are going to be major and minor chords in each scale, and it really just depends on the scale. And you'll be able to remember that, like I said, once you look at the how it's laid out, and you just take the amount of skipping. So you want to make this chord right here. Whoop. Yeah, that's how you're supposed to go. So that's yep, that's E, and it's a minor one because it has a space of 2 and then a space of 3 instead of a space of 3 and then a space of 2. So that's the thing you need to remember with chords. There's a 7-note difference, not counting the scale by way of notes. It's not 7 notes up the scale, because the scale is pretty much 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's not that. It's this. So just remember that. And then when you're building chords, it's all about figuring out how many you want to skip in terms of the scale. And what chord you get from that is based on whether you want a sustain, whether you want a normal, or whether you want a seventh, one with an added seventh is what it's called when you go like this. But yeah, just be creative, and just all you have to do really for constructing chords is make sure that it's in key. When it's in key, then just kind of move notes around and decide what you like the sound of best. So that's the idea behind chords, and you'll have a lot that you'll just really need to experiment on, and just try things out. But the next video here, I'm going to talk about arps, bass lines, and adding notes to dance around the top of chords. So it's going to be a lot more into a lot more into, you know, how do you make these start to be musical instead of just knowing how to make a chord and how to make a series of notes that sound good together. Like, how do you actually start to make a song off of this? So until then, I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.